Hey there. After 18 years of marriage, I thought I knew my wife inside and out. Then, for just a split second at a red light, I caught a glimpse of her phone. In those 11 words, everything came crashing down. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your body. But it wasn't just Ethan who had a hand in this. What I uncovered during my investigation turned my world upside down and not only ruined my marriage, but also wrecked the lives of 3 other men. My name's Samuel Carter. I'm 44 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty solid life. I had a career I was proud of, a nice house in the Portland suburbs, and a wife of 18 years whom I thought loved me just as much as I loved her. Olivia and I met in our late 20s. We built a life together, weathered the typical ups and downs of a long-term relationship. We weren't perfect, who is? But I honestly thought we had a good thing going. I adored everything about Olivia. Then, one day, as she was sitting in the car, she unknowingly shattered that illusion. It happened so fast, so unexpectedly, that for a moment, I thought I was imagining things. We were heading home from a dinner with friends. I was in the passenger seat, fiddling with the air conditioning while Olivia drove. She was distracted, juggling the road and her phone at the red lights. It was a warm spring evening, the kind that makes you roll down the windows and breathe in the summer air that's just around the corner. I remember feeling so content, full stomach, good company, and Olivia humming along to some pop song on the radio. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and I caught a glimpse of something. It wasn't quite a smile, more like a quiet satisfaction. It crossed her face. At the next red light, she picked up her phone and quickly typed out a reply. "Who's blowing up your phone?" I asked, more curious than suspicious. "Just work stuff," she replied, placing the phone face down on her lap. The light turned green, and as she accelerated, her phone slid slightly. That's when it happened. A rookie mistake. As she tried to catch it, her thumb brushed the screen, and in an instant, the messages popped up, visible for that brief, world-changing moment. A name I didn't recognize, Ethan, and a message that knocked the breath from my chest. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your body." The car swerved slightly as Olivia quickly flipped the phone over, but it was too late. I'd seen it. Those 11 words. Words that completely rewrote the last 18 years of my marriage. "Who's Ethan?" I asked, somehow keeping my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. Olivia's reaction told me everything I needed to know. A flash of panic in her eyes, quickly hidden behind a thin veil of irritation. "Just a colleague," she said, her voice too casual. "He's just a little office flirt. No big deal." "Harmless," I repeated, the word tasting like metal in my mouth. "Does your harmless colleague normally talk about your body like that?" Her laugh was sharp, defensive. "Oh my God, Samuel. It's nothing. You're being ridiculous." But as her knuckles gripped the steering wheel tighter, I noticed she wouldn't look me in the eye. Right then, something shifted. A trust one didn't even realize was fragile had just snapped. And in that moment, it became painfully clear to me that things would never be the same between us. The rest of the drive felt like being submerged underwater, sounds muffled, everything moving in slow motion, and my thoughts struggling to stay afloat. I stared out the window, watching the suburban houses blur past, each one hiding its own secrets behind neatly trimmed hedges and drawn curtains. When we finally pulled into our driveway, Olivia turned off the engine and gave me a practice smile. "Ready for that nightcap?" she asked, as if the past 18 minutes had never happened. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed her phone, which had fallen between us. "Samuel," she lunged for it, but I was already out of the car, standing in the driveway with her unlocked phone in my hand. The messages were right there. Dozens of them. Not just from today, weeks, maybe even months worth. Each one more explicit than the last. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. We're that red thing I like. Last meeting ran late. Can we push to 3? Need at least 2 hours with you." I could still taste her, a bitter aftertaste that made my stomach twist. I looked up and saw Olivia standing next to the car. Her face was a mask of icy anger, not the shame I had expected. "Give me my phone," she said, her voice low, controlled. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady, but my insides were anything but. "This is ridiculous. You're invading my privacy for no reason." I let out a laugh, but it sounded hollow, unfamiliar. "Nothing? You called us nothing." I raised the phone, the screen lighting up the space between us, casting shadows on the tension. It's just flirting. God, Samuel, she scoffed. When did you become so insecure? Her dismissal hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just the lie. It was the contempt behind it. Stop lying to me. I was shouting now, no longer caring who might hear. I can read, Olivia. These aren't just flirtations. You're sleeping with him. I saw a shift in her expression, something calculating taking over the defiance. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. Fine. It happened once. A mistake. I was going to end it. The ease with which she said it almost impressed me. But I'd already scrolled back, seen the pattern. The late nights at work. The weekend seminars. Then I came across another message. What about the same hotel as last time? What about Tuesday? Perfect. Her eyes narrowed. You know what? I don't need this. She snatched the phone from my hand. The glow from her wedding ring caught the light from the porch, the one we'd forgotten to turn off earlier that morning. I'm going inside. When you're ready to talk like an adult, instead of throwing a tantrum in the driveway, let me know. She walked off, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete, each step precise and metronomic. The front door opened and closed behind her, leaving me alone in the deepening darkness. I stood there, feeling the weight of my world crumbling silently around me. And in that moment, it hit me with gut-wrenching clarity. This woman, the one I had built my entire life around, was now a stranger to me. I didn't follow her inside. I couldn't. The walls of our home, once full of meaning, the carefully chosen furniture, the vacation photos framed on the walls, now they felt like a museum of a life that never truly existed. Instead, I found myself driving, without any real destination. My body moved on autopilot, eventually taking me to O'Malley's, a quiet bar downtown where the lights were low enough to hide red eyes and the bartenders never asked questions. Bourbon neat, I said to the balding bartender. He nodded and poured a generous measure without saying a word. I was halfway through my second drink when a voice cut through my thoughts. Either someone died or someone lied. I turned to see a woman sliding onto the stool beside mine, mid-40s, sharp eyes, and auburn hair cut into a no-nonsense bob. She didn't exactly smile, but there was something knowing in her gaze. What makes you say that? I asked. She shrugged and signaled to the bartender. 20 years in family law. I know the look. You're a lawyer? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Divorce attorney, she said, extending her hand. Sophie Parker. I shook her hand without thinking. Samuel Carter. So which is it? Death or deceit? I took another sip of bourbon, the warmth hitting me harder now. Deceit, she replied, nodding as the bartender set her martini in front of her. Wife for husband. Wife, I repeated. Let me guess. You caught her. She denied it, Sophie said, taking a sip from her martini. And when denial didn't work, she turned it on you. I stared at her, the bourbon glass frozen halfway to my lips. How did you know? Like I said, she shrugged, 20 years of practice. She took another deliberate sip. And let me guess again. She made you feel like you were crazy for suspecting her. Like you were the problem. The way she said it hit me in the chest. It felt so damn accurate. It was a text, I said, swallowing hard. From a guy named Ethan. Explicit. Sophie's mouth tightened. When you confronted her? I nodded, still feeling the sting. She laughed at me. Called me insecure. Classic gaslighting. Making you question what you know to be true. Gaslighting. It's all about manipulating someone to doubt their own reality. Sophie studied me over the rim of her glass. And I'm guessing this isn't the first time, huh? Just the first time you caught her red-handed. I thought back to other moments. Strange phone calls. Unexplained absences. The defensiveness when I asked simple questions. How many times had Olivia made me feel unreasonable just for asking where she'd been? You think she's done this before? Sophie didn't answer me directly. Instead, she asked, what's your next move? The question lingered in the air between us. It felt heavy, like it carried the weight of what was to come. What was I going to do? Go home and pretend the night never happened? Try to deal with it, while Olivia kept seeing Ethan behind my back. I didn't know. I don't know, I admitted, not sure what else to say. Yes, you do, Sophie replied, her voice firm but kind. You just haven't faced it yet. She was right. Deep down, I knew what had to happen. I just wasn't sure I had the strength to do it. People like your wife, Sophie said, don't cheat because they're missing something. They cheat because they think they can get away with it. Her words hit like a slap, bringing into focus something I hadn't been able to put into words. Olivia wasn't sorry. She was only sorry she got caught. I need proof, I said without thinking. More than just the messages. Sophie nodded in understanding. That's where it always starts. I left O'Malley's with Sophie's card in my pocket and a plan forming. Not a good plan, probably not even an honorable one. But then, honor felt like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I drove to Daniel's, calling him from the driveway. It was close to midnight, but Daniel picked up on the second ring. Samuel? You okay? No, I said simply. Can I crash at your place tonight? 20 minutes later, we were sitting at his kitchen table. Daniel listened in silence as I told him what had happened, his expression growing darker with each word. That's messed up, man, he said when I finished. What are you gonna do? I need to know everything, I said. How long's this been going on? If Ethan's the only one. Daniel leaned back, rubbing his hand through his messy hair. You think there are others? The question hit me hard, a punch to the gut. I hadn't thought about it until now. But now, I don't know, I said slowly. But I need to find out. Daniel was quiet for a moment. You remember Max Cooper from college? He works in digital security now. Specializes in electronic forensics. I remembered a lanky guy with glasses, always surrounded by computers. You still in touch? Daniel nodded. He owes me a big favor. The next morning, after a sleepless night on Daniel's couch, I met Max at a quiet coffee shop downtown. He looked older, more polished, but still had that focused intensity one remembered. Daniel, fill me in, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Sorry you're going through this. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Here's what I can do, Max continued, all business. If you have access to her accounts, email, social media, cloud storage, I can help extract and analyze the data. Even text messages, if we can get her phone. It's not exactly, he paused, choosing his words carefully, conventional. But neither is cheating. Is it legal? I wasn't sure I cared about that anymore. Max's face was unreadable. You're married, share devices, accounts, a home. It's a gray area, at worst. That was enough for me. What do you need? Passwords, if you've got them. Access to devices. And be ready for what we might find. He locked eyes with me. Some things, you just can't unknow, Samuel. I thought of Olivia's mocking laugh in the driveway. Her cold look when she called me insecure. I already can't unknow what I saw last night, I said, my voice quiet. At least this way, I'll have the full picture. Max nodded. One more thing. Don't let her know you're suspicious. Act normal. If she figures it out, she'll delete everything. The idea of going home and pretending everything was fine, while Olivia continued to lie, made my stomach churn. But I understood why it had to be done. I'll text her, I decided. Say I stayed at Daniel's after too many drinks, then need time to cool off. Good, Max said, approving. That buys us some time while I set things up. As I drove back to Daniel's, a strange calm settled in. The pain was still there, but now it was focused on a clear purpose. Olivia thought she was clever. She thought I was too trusting, too naive, to see through her lies. She was about to find out how wrong she was. Max worked faster than I thought he would. 3 days after our coffee shop meeting, Max called me to his home office, a converted garage filled with monitors, servers, and equipment I couldn't even name. You better sit down, he said, motioning to a chair beside his desk. I'd been staying at Daniel's, telling Olivia I needed space to think. She'd sent angry texts accusing me of overreacting and sweet messages remembering the good times. Classic manipulation, the kind that might have worked before, but only strengthened my resolve now. How bad is it? I asked, bracing myself for the worst. Max's face was serious. Worse than you think. He turned one of his screens toward me. Ethan isn't the only one, he said, showing me a spreadsheet filled with meticulous details, names, dates, locations, and excerpts from messages. There were 3 columns of data, each with a different man's name at the top. Ethan, Ryan, Luke. 3. My voice sounded strange, distant. I can confirm that. Max nodded. All ongoing, overlapping affairs. How long has this been going on? At least 14 months, he replied. Based on the first messages I found. 14 months. Over a year of lies. Of her coming home to me after being with them. Of lying to my face, day after day. The patterns are consistent. Max continued, his tone all business despite the personal nature of the info. hotel meetings during work events, extended lunch breaks, weekend seminars that aren't real. He clicked to another screen, showing a color-coded calendar. Blue is Ethan, usually Tuesdays and every other Thursday. Green is Ryan, mainly Fridays. Red is Luke, a little more unpredictable, but typically when you're out of town for work. I stared at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, laid out so coldly and clearly. The methodical nature of it almost made me admire it, if it weren't so heartbreaking. There's more, Max said, his voice softer now. Texts, emails, some explicit pictures. Show me, I said, my voice hardening. Samuel, you really don't have to. Show me. Max hesitated, but then opened another folder. I forced myself to look at it all. Every message, every picture, every lie. I needed to see everything, to ingrain it into my mind, so there'd be no doubt, no second-guessing where I might convince myself it wasn't that bad. It was worse. She had them on rotation. I said it finally, a strange sense of calm washing over me, like I was following a script. Max nodded, unease in his eyes. Looks that way, and they don't seem to know about each other. That caught my attention. They don't know? I asked, focusing on the communications. No, Max answered. She's been careful to keep them apart. Something inside me clicked. Anger solidified into cold resolve. Olivia had created a complex web of deceit, managing multiple affairs with the precision of a project manager. She made me look like a fool in my own marriage, all while maintaining the illusion of being the perfect wife. I want it all. I told Max every text, every email, every picture. I want it organized. By person, by date, everything. Max studied me for a long moment, concern clear in his expression. What's your plan, Samuel? I thought back to Olivia's dismissive laugh when I confronted her, the way she tried to make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. Justice, I said, my voice calm. I'm planning justice. As I drove back to Daniel's, holding a flash drive full of undeniable proof of Olivia's betrayal, a plan began to form in my mind. Olivia thought she was clever. She thought she was in control. She was about to learn how wrong she was. For the first time since seeing that message on her phone, I smiled. Not out of joy, but out of unshakable determination. I didn't go home immediately. I couldn't face Olivia yet. Not until my plan was fully ready. Instead, I stayed at Daniel's for another 2 days, going over the evidence Max had gathered. You're starting to freak me out, Daniel said, watching me sort through files on my laptop. You've barely slept, he added. I'll sleep when this is over, I muttered, not looking up. The truth was, I'd never been more awake, more focused. The shock and pain had turned into something sharper, a cold clarity that pushed me forward, even when exhaustion tried to take hold. Sophie, the divorce attorney from the bar, had become part of my inner circle. When I called her with what Max had found, she agreed to meet us right away. This is comprehensive, she said, scanning the files in Daniel's living room. Most spouses don't have half this much evidence. What are my options? I asked. Sophie leaned back, considering her response. Legally, with this evidence and Oregon's infidelity clause, you're entitled to a favorable divorce settlement. But I'm guessing that's not the end of it, she said, knowing me too well. She was right. A favorable settlement wasn't enough. Not after everything Olivia had put me through. I want her to lose everything, I said, my voice steady. Not just the money. Her dignity. Her control. The perfect image she's built. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but Sophie didn't budge. Then you need to dismantle her support system, she said matter-of-factly. These men, they're part of it, whether they realize it or not. They don't know about each other, I clarified. Max confirmed it. I added. A slow smile spread across Sophie's face. That's your leverage. The plan took shape in the next 24 hours. Sophie drafted the divorce papers, citing infidelity with multiple named parties. Max compiled dossiers on each of Olivia's lovers. Ethan, a sales executive at a rival company. Ryan, her yoga instructor. Luke, our neighbor's younger brother who'd moved to town last year. None of them knew they were sharing her. I confirmed it, reviewing all the details. Each one thinks he's the only one. I asked. That changes tomorrow, Sophie said, her voice grave. That evening, I finally texted Olivia. Told her I was ready to talk and that I'd be home the next day, Friday, around 6 p.m. She replied instantly with a string of relieved messages, saying she missed me, and that we could work through this misunderstanding. What she didn't know was that, Friday at 4 p.m., each of her lovers would receive an identical email from an anonymous account, with proof of Olivia's other relationships and an invitation to our house at 6:30 p.m. to discuss the situation. But I had one last call to make. Olivia's parents had always adored me, believed fully in our marriage. They deserved to hear the truth, not the sanitized version Olivia would inevitably spin. "This feels extreme," Daniel said, watching me get ready to call them. "Is it?" I shot back. "More extreme than carrying on 3 separate affairs for over a year? More extreme than laughing in my face when I caught her?" Daniel held up his hands in surrender. "I'm not judging, man. Just be careful. There's no coming back from this." "I don't want to come back," I said, the words surprising even me. "I want to burn it all down and walk away." The call with Olivia's parents was difficult, as expected. Her mother cried. Her father, a retired judge with an unwavering sense of justice, asked detailed questions, his voice growing colder with each answer I gave. "We'll be there," he said finally. When I hung up at 6 o'clock, a strange calm took over me. Tomorrow, Olivia's perfectly crafted house of lies would come crashing down. That thought should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, it gave me only grim resolve and a hollow ache for the life I thought I had. "Get some sleep," Sophie advised, gathering her things. "Tomorrow's going to be intense." I nodded, knowing sleep was impossible. How could I rest when tomorrow was the day I'd finally reclaim control over my fractured life? Friday arrived, filled with strange, electric anticipation. I spent the morning at Daniel's apartment, finalizing the plan with Sophie and Max. "Remember," Sophie warned, "stay calm no matter what she does. The moment you lose your cool, you lose control." I nodded, slipping the flash drive with all the evidence into my pocket. "I won't lose control. Not this time." At 5:30 p.m., I pulled into our driveway. The house looked just as it had when I left, like a monument to the life I thought we had. Inside, I could see lights on, movement in the kitchen. Olivia, preparing for my return. I took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. She was waiting in the entryway when I opened the door, her face a perfect mask of concern. "Samuel," she said, stepping forward to embrace me. "I'm so glad you're home." I sidestepped her hug, watching her expression shift to annoyance for a split second before settling back into practiced concern. "We need to talk," I said. "Of course," she replied, gesturing toward the living room. "I made your favorite dinner." "I thought we could." "I know everything, Olivia." She froze, confusion flashing across her face. "What do you mean? Ethan? Ryan? Luke?" I clearly pronounced each name, watching her reaction. "All of them. For over a year." The shock in her eyes was real, at first, but it quickly faded, replaced by cold calculation. She opened her mouth, likely to start denying it all, but the doorbell rang, cutting her off. "That would be your parents," I said, keeping my tone even. "My parents." Panic flashed across her face. "Why are they here?" she asked, voice trembling. "I invited them. They deserve to know why their son-in-law is filing for divorce." Her face hardened. "You had no right." Actually, I had every right. I stepped past her and opened the door, just like I had every right to invite them. Olivia's parents stood on the porch, their faces grim. Her father, Judge William Harris, looked at me with a blend of disappointment and resignation. Her mother, Charlotte, couldn't meet my gaze. "Come in," I said. Olivia was just about to explain why she's been sleeping with 3 different men behind my back. Charlotte gasped quietly. William nodded, as if his worst fears were now confirmed. Olivia stood frozen in the hallway, her perfect facade crumbling as her parents entered. For the first time in our marriage, she looked genuinely lost for words. "What is this?" she finally asked, anger tightening her voice. "Some kind of intervention?" "No," I replied, calm as ever. "It's the truth. Something you've never been good at." The doorbell rang again. Olivia's eyes snapped to the door in confusion. "And that," I continued, "would be Ethan. Or Ryan. Or Luke. I invited them too." The color drained from Olivia's face as the truth sank in. "You didn't," she whispered. I smiled, though it wasn't out of humor. "I did. And now," I said, "we're going to have a nice, honest conversation about exactly who you are." The next 30 minutes were chaos. Ethan arrived first, his usual confidence faltering when he saw Olivia's parents. Ryan and Luke arrived within minutes of each other, creating an increasingly awkward scene as each man realized he wasn't the only one who'd received an invitation. "What is this?" Ethan demanded, looking back and forth between me and Olivia. "Sit down," I said calmly, motioning to the couch. "All of you." Surprisingly, they obeyed. 3 men who'd been sleeping with my wife, now following my lead. Olivia remained standing, her eyes bouncing nervously between her lovers and her parents, panic rising with every second that passed. "Samuel, please," she said, her voice quivering. "We can talk about this privately. Like you talk privately with Ethan?" I responded. "Or Ryan. Or Luke." The 3 men exchanged glances, slowly starting to understand. "You guys know each other?" Ryan asked, looking from Ethan to Luke. "No," Luke replied, shaking his head. "We've never met." I connected my laptop to the TV, and the spreadsheet Max had created appeared on the screen. Dates, times, locations, color-coded by lover. 14 months of deceit laid out in cold, clinical detail. "For over a year," I began, addressing the room, "my wife has been maintaining relationships with all 3 of you, simultaneously, on rotation." Olivia's mother made a small, distressed noise. Her father's face was like stone. "This is insane," Olivia snapped, finally finding her voice. "You're violating my privacy, humiliating me in front of." "Privacy," I laughed, the sound sharp and unfamiliar even to me. "That's rich, coming from the woman who's been lying to everyone in this room." I clicked to the next screen, revealing the text messages between Olivia and Ethan, discussing their usual Tuesday routine. "Does this look familiar?" I asked Ethan. His face darkened. "You said your husband was clueless," he said to Olivia. "He was," she blurted, immediately realizing her mistake. I methodically moved through the evidence, showing each man the details Olivia had shared about him to the others. How she carefully arranged their meetings so they wouldn't overlap. How she used the same hotel room on different days, with different men. The most damning were her texts about me. Mocking, belittling words about her boring husband, who suspected nothing. With every revelation, the atmosphere thickened, charged with anger and betrayal. Finally, Judge Harris spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. "Olivia," he asked, his tone firm, "is this true? All of it?" For a brief moment, I thought she might still try to deny it. But faced with undeniable proof and 5 sets of eyes full of betrayal, something in her finally broke. "Fine," she yelled. "Yes, it's all true. I was bored. Is that what you want to hear? That perfect, dependable Samuel wasn't enough? That I needed more?" Her confession hung in the air, raw and unforgiving. "Well, congratulations," she continued, turning to me with venom. "You've ruined everything. Are you happy now?" I looked at my wife, the woman I had shared my life with for 18 years, and felt a strange sense of calm. "No, Olivia," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not happy, but for the first time in a long time, I'm free." I handed her the envelope with the divorce papers Sophie had prepared. "We're done," I said simply. And unlike you, I only needed to say it once. The next few hours unfolded like a movie I was watching from the sidelines, rather than living. Ethan left first, cursing as he walked out. Ryan followed, offering an awkward apology to me. Luke left without a word, his fury obvious. Olivia's parents stayed longer, her father pulling me aside for a private conversation in the kitchen. "I always thought of you as a son," Judge Harris said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Not in me, but in the situation, in my daughter. Whatever happens next, you'll always be family to us." That simple kindness nearly shattered me. I had been running on anger and determination for days, but his words cracked through my defenses. After they left, Olivia and I faced each other across the living room. The house felt enormous, filled with the ghosts of what we once were. "You've destroyed everything," she said flatly. "Humiliated me in front of everyone I care about." "No, Olivia," I replied, exhaustion weighing down every word. "You did that yourself." "So righteous," she sneered, a flash of her old defensive anger returning. "So perfect. Tell me, did it feel good? Getting your revenge?" I took a moment to consider her question. Did it feel good? The confrontation had brought no joy, no satisfaction, only a hollow sense of vindication. It wasn't about feeling good. Finally, I answered. It was about the truth. Everyone deserves to know who they're really dealing with. She laughed bitterly. The truth. As if you've never lied. Not like this, I said, my voice soft but firm. Never like this. Olivia's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from her. For a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of something real beneath her defenses. Regret, perhaps, or just exhaustion. What happens now? She asked. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings, I said, repeating the terms Sophie had outlined. The divorce will proceed with or without your cooperation. The prenup is clear on infidelity. And just like that, it was over. 18 years, gone in an instant. The question hit me like a punch, as though I had made the decision to end it all in one stroke, instead of her year-long, systematic betrayal. It was over the moment you decided I wasn't enough, I told her. You just didn't bother to tell me. I turned and walked upstairs to the guest bedroom, where I would be staying until she left. Behind me, I heard what might have been a sob, but I didn't look back. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt nothing for Olivia. Not anger, not love, not even hate. Just a vast, empty void that, one day, I hoped would be filled with something better. 6 months passed in a blur. The divorce moved forward quickly, thanks to Sophie's skill and the overwhelming evidence of Olivia's infidelity. The prenup, which I had almost forgotten about, turned out to be invaluable, protecting my assets and the house I had largely paid for. Olivia didn't fight the terms. Whatever defiance had driven her during our confrontation that night had clearly burned out. By the time we communicated through lawyers, she was subdued, almost meek. I heard through mutual friends that she'd left Portland and moved to Seattle for a fresh start. None of her lovers went with her. Daniel insisted on throwing a divorce-finalized dinner once the papers were signed. Sophie came too, no longer as my lawyer, but as a friend who had helped me through the darkest period of my life. To freedom, Daniel toasted, raising his glass. To truth, Sophie added. And to whatever comes next. I raised my glass and surprised myself by finding I meant it. After dinner, Sophie and I walked along the waterfront, the spring air promising renewal. Any regrets? She asked. About how I handled things? I thought it over for a moment. No, I answered finally. The truth had to come out. Not just for me, but for everyone involved. Her parents. Those men who didn't know they were being manipulated. Sometimes healing can only begin after everything's exposed to the light, Sophie said, understanding in her eyes. And now, she asked, what's next for Samuel Carter? Honestly, I don't know. I smiled, the expression feeling more natural than it had in months. That's the exciting part. 3 weeks later, I sold the house. Too many memories lingered in those rooms. The good ones, now tainted, and the bad ones that still haunted me some nights. My new place was smaller, closer to downtown. A fresh space for a fresh start. Judge Harris called the day I moved in. He and Charlotte had kept in touch, defying Olivia's attempts to turn them against me. Their loyalty, in the wake of everything, was a gift I hadn't expected. We're in town next weekend, he said. Charlotte insists on bringing you a housewarming gift. I like that. I told him so, meaning it. As I unpacked boxes that evening, I found the old photo albums I'd almost left behind. 18 years of memories with a woman who had become a stranger. For a moment, I considered throwing them away, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Those years had happened. They were part of my story, even if the ending hadn't been what I expected. Instead, I placed them on a high shelf, acknowledgement, not a shrine. Then I opened my laptop and started researching photography classes. It was something I'd always wanted to explore, but had never made time for. The future stretched out before me, unburdened by deception, full of possibilities. For the first time in a long while, I was truly free.